This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
You think we need one more? You think we need one more? All right, we'll get one more.
And welcome back to Spec Tales, a comic book podcast. This is episode 4. I'm Jake, your host. He's Jesus. How's it going?
What's going on, buddy?
And today we have a special guest, Ryan with Automatic Comics. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
For those of you who have never listened, this is a comic book podcast where we focus on telling Grail tales or stories specifically about chasing a comic book Grail. And we also discuss comic book speculation and that sort of thing. Okay, well, Ryan, let's just start with a real quick introduction. Ryan, you are at Automatic Comics on both Instagram, eBay, and YouTube, correct?
Yeah. So Instagram, it's at automatic_comics, and then eBay, I think it's automatic_comics. Then YouTube, it's just automatic space comics. So, but all very close together. You know, you'll find them.
Yeah, for those who don't know Ryan, definitely go out and check for him. He does a lot of really good videos every week where he analyzes the heritage auction, and he drops a lot of information on a weekly basis. We're talking hours worth of research that you get within 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how long the video is. But a lot of really good information. I've known Ryan for, I don't know, what was it, 9 months now since I
think December, because it would have been, you know, when you were buying that book
Christmas Day. Christmas Day was the day that I bought.
It was Giant Size Defenders number 4.
Giant Size Defenders 3. Yes.
Oh, 3. Okay. Yeah.
And ever since then, I've just been gleaning tons and tons of information from Ryan, and I like to make him think, or I like to tell him he's the one getting all the information from me. I'm really doing all the work here.
Yeah, it's where I get all my ideas from, you know, from Jake.
Yeah, he needs the help. Okay, so let's kick this episode off with what did you just recently purchase? Got 3 guys here. I can kick everything off. This last week, I went into my local comic book store just to pick up my weekly pull list. And I knew I was going to go back. I had purchased the first issue of Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. They had the subsequent issues as well. So I picked up issue number 4, which is it includes the origin of Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. It's got an iconic Steranko cover.
Yeah, those both have awesome Steranko covers. They're both
fantastic. I love the cover. So it was a deal. The LCS had the book listed as a very good, not very fine. It was very good, and the book was listed for $8. So I was sold.
I mean, I can go what I bought. I recently bought, I think I mentioned it to you, Jake, those negative variants from John Tyler Christopher off of his website. Do you remember me mentioning those to you?
I remember you mentioning it. What book specifically?
Man, I don't even know what book. I'm trying to look for the email, but they were just so cool. They're Phoenix, and they have a green one, a red one for the Dark Phoenix, and then a white one. And I wasn't able to get the white one. The white one sold out the fastest, and it was the most expensive. I think it was $35. And then the red one was $25, and the green one was $20. So
I've seen them getting people pricing them up really high.
Really high. On the day they dropped, the green one was like $145 on eBay with like a confirmation that they ordered it. So they're not in people's hands yet. And so I was like, man, that's already a lot. And this is what I'm saying, Jake. They pop real fast, and then they wane, and then they go up again. Like I had the Sins of Harry Osborn number 4, which was the Spider-Man negative variant, and that one got the most likes on my Instagram page by far, in a short amount of time, and then it sold pretty quickly. So I don't know, people like them. I like them. I think they're cool. I think they're also funny. Like somebody put the white one up and they started like drawing on it, saying that they don't line up with her leg and her body. So I just think they're really cool. They're really, really cool books.
Ryan, I think you're the only one that hasn't listed what you purchased recently, and I have a request I'd like to make. So you mentioned on a YouTube, you did a show with Paul Cook, and you mentioned you had made a purchase on Heritage Auction last week, and that you were going to be doing an unboxing for it.
Yeah, I'm always buying stuff on Heritage. They get my money most weeks. This I bought a few books, but the two that I'll mention, I guess like the two biggest ones, I bought a Iron Man 55 9/2 white page book because I had to have a better book than Jake. So
hey, you want to trade? You said earlier you didn't care about white pages. I'll trade you straight up.
I mean, I care about it, because it does increase the value and demand of the book. So like I said, I don't price them for white pages, but yeah. So I picked up that because Thanos is one of my favorite characters. I've always liked that character, and I think it's because I grew up with the Infinity Gauntlet storyline and those I'm trying to remember what's the little triangle that was in the corner. I don't know why I'm blanking on it. Infinity Quest or Infinity Crossover. That's what it was, where they had those little triangles in the corner of just tons and tons of books. And so it was Infinity Crossover, and I'd buy just all those books when I was a kid. And so I picked up that one. And then the other book I picked up that I'm most excited about getting is I bought a book called Mystery Men Comics number 4. And so this is from November of 1939. And it's this cover of this guy getting ready to throw a woman into like a flaming pit. And this other guy busting through the back with a gun, trying to shoot him to stop him. And those early Mystery Men books are rare and they are tough to come by. And I felt that the price on this one was just too good to pass up, so I ended up picking up that book. That may make it on my keepers list just because it's so rare. I don't know if I can let that one go very easily.
When you said Mystery Men number 4, my brain went to the 1997 Ben Stiller comedy.
Oh God, yeah, that movie's fantastic.
I was like, they made the bowling ball.
Which is based off of that 1939 book. No, I'm just joking.
I don't know if they made comic books for those characters or that movie, but if they did,
I have no idea.
I think they're based on it, but like loosely based on something.
It's definitely not this. Like Mystery Men Comics number 1 is the first appearance of Blue Beetle, like the first Blue Beetle. So that's where you can kind of get back to kind of the origins of some of those characters.
Okay, Ryan, one of the things that we like to do is tell a story. I know you've mentioned before you have a story, or I don't know which one you had thought maybe you would talk about. You said that you had a story you told on your YouTube channel, like early on. Is that the one you were thinking, or?
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of doing. And that's the tough thing for me is I don't have so much the normal like Grail tales because I'm going online and I'm buying books. So it's not like I'm usually like searching stuff out. I'm like, oh, that's a deal. I'll buy that book. And so there's not much of a story for that. So I'm going to reach back to my childhood a little bit more with my older brother kind of like ripping me off for a book. But now I am kind of ahead of the game now on that book. So basically when we were kids, we all collected. I have 2 brothers, and we all collected comics. And we played competitive tennis, and so we'd travel around and we'd play tennis at different tournaments. And one of the first things we'd always do when we get there is we'd get the phone book from the hotel. That it's always in like the little nightstand or whatever there, and we would look up whatever comic shops might be around. And so we had found this one comic shop. I don't remember the name of it at the time, but went there. And my older brother found an Amazing Spider-Man annual number 1, and it was $15, and so he bought that book for $15. And then I really like Amazing Spider-Man or Spider-Man was my favorite character when I was a kid. I would say he was my number 1 character as a kid. That's most of what, a lot of what my books are that I have for my childhood collection. And so I wanted that book for my brother. And you have Overstreet and you have no idea how to grade especially when you're a kid, and you're just like, you see like prices in there. You're like, oh, this book is worth hundreds of dollars, even though this thing it's probably, I'd say it's like a 1.5, something like that. And so he sold it to me for $75. And it was not worth $75 at the time, but I see you see like the near mint price. You're like, oh, this book is worth like $400, $500, whatever at the time. And so, but I've kept it for all those years. I still have that same book, and it's now worth a lot more than $75. Even a 1.5 is running around $1,000 now. So it's definitely, it turned out fine. That was one of the things when I first really got back into comics. My older brother is what he kind of triggered it. And he had gone through my books because he had them at his house because my dad had threatened to throw all our comics out when we went back for one Christmas. He's like, I want these out of the house. And so, I didn't have any room in the car. And so my brother took them, and he, in that time frame, had gotten really into comics. He buys and sells a lot. He has a store on Atomic Avenue where he sells and that kind of thing. And so he had gone through my books, and I had a Werewolf by Night 32. And so that I had bought as a kid for like $20, and he sent that in to get graded, came back a 6.5. He had it pressed and all that, came back 6.5. And that's what really, one of the things that started my selling, because I had that book and I'm like, oh man, at that time, that book was worth about $950, which is what I sold it for. It's worth a lot more now. But that kind of is one of the things that really triggered that for me, is that my older brother started going through my books. And then when he brought the books back to me, eventually one time when they visited, I started going through them. And that's when I just started finding some of these books that actually had some value that I had collected when I was a kid. Because while I did buy a lot of the moderns, like at the time, like the X-Men #1, the multiple covers, and X-Force #1 with the Deadpool cards and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I also tended to buy a fair amount of Bronze Age type books, Spider-Man, that kind of thing. And my grandparents, they kind of dabbled in antiques. And so whenever they came across comics, they would bring them to us, and we would kind of like split them up. And so I've had some older, like Golden Age, Wonder Woman, Superman, action, that type of comics. And so that kind of stuff, you all kind of, you find it and you're like, oh, this actually has some decent value now. And it triggered some of this, my getting back into comics and then getting into selling.
And how long ago was that?
So he brought them back here about 3 years ago. And I've gotten back into comics a little like more seriously, where I started really buying a lot of stuff probably around, it's probably about 2.5 years ago, 2.5 to 2 years ago. It was definitely, I remember the first book, the first like bigger book I bought was, I think, Amazing Adventures #1. It's the first appearance of Dr. Druid or Dr. Droom. I think it's I think that's what it is. But he's like a predecessor to Doctor Strange. When I ended up having to click buy on that book, it was a big step, because I had never spent that kind of money on a comic before. And it does unfortunately get much easier after you've spent that money. You're like, oh, it's not that hard. I just have to click this button, and then you can get these cool things showing up at your house not too long after.
Yeah, but then your wife starts noticing, or at least that's what happened to mine.
Then you get the question, how much did this cost? I'm very open with my wife about all the comics, and she knows I sell a lot of books, and so that's kind of the other side of it, is that I'm buying books with the money that I get from selling books. So it's kind of a self-sustaining monster at this point for the most part.
Yeah, and I don't get those questions anymore either, just because of that exact thing. It's money that's coming from comics I'm selling, and my wife has started figuring out exactly how valuable the comics are. So that has significantly helped the situation.
Well, I envy both of y'all, because I still get the same questions all the time.
Questions still come every now and again, but it's usually like, when are you selling it becomes the next question. How soon are you going to sell that? When do we get the money?
One of the funniest things I remember my brother told me is there was one Heritage auction where I bought it was like 16 or 17 books, and they sent it in this massive box. And it shows up, and I took a picture of it and sent it to my brother. My brother's like, "Oh, I call that the home wrecker." I was just like, "Oh, that's so funny."
The Widowmaker.
That's funny, man. Yeah, I get that too, and I don't know about you guys. I don't think Ryan. I don't know, but like I ebb and flow when I buy. right? Like, so I'll be in a period of buying, and then I get graded, and then I sell, and then I buy. And when all those packages start coming in, that's when my wife is like on me, like, well, how much was that one? When is that one getting sold? How long is it going to take? It's just natural for me to be in an ebb and flow cycle. But yeah, man, when you get those big packages, it's crazy.
Well, I mean, I don't really hide anything because it's all on YouTube too, so people know what I'm buying and what I'm putting into these books. So, yeah, no, it's definitely pretty open out there.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, Ryan. You said your brother is the one that actually sent your Werewolf by Night 32 in to get graded.
Yeah,
he just did that on his own, just to see what he got graded for.
Well, because he gets a lot of stuff graded. Like I think I maybe have sent you some pictures before where it's like got like just slabs covering the floor and that kind of thing. And so he sends in pretty large submissions, and so he had seen that book in there and knew it was a valuable book. And so he messaged me. He's like, "Oh yeah, I was going to send this book in," and so he sent it in for me. And that's kind of what, like I said, started a lot of this off.
Nice. And then did you pay him for the grading, or was he just?
No, I mean, I asked him, I was like, "Oh, you want me?" And he's like, "No, this one's on me." And I was like, "All right, that's cool. Thanks." So
the first one's always free.
Yeah.
You mentioned you have two brothers. Does your other brother grade or anything like that, or do any books?
No, not as an adult. As a kid, we all collected. We all had, a couple long boxes of books in our house, but no, he doesn't today.
And you said you still have that ASM annual #1, right?
Yes.
But it's not graded?
No.
Any desire to get it graded?
I've thought about it. I have thought about sending it in to get graded, but I'm not really that motivated to sell it. It's kind of like it has that memory tied to it. And so I could get probably, like I said, like $1,000 for it, but I kind of would almost rather have the book than the money in that case.
So in your mind, if you grade it, you're going to sell it?
Not always, but I mean, I don't always get stuff graded. I sell plenty of books raw as well. I usually kind of do an evaluation on what I have in it and what the time and money and getting it graded and pressed and everything. Because whenever that book costs more, it means it costs you more to get that book graded. So I think that's something that a lot of people think they need to send in everything, and you really don't. It's actually something I've really noticed quite a bit over the last year or so, that raw books are selling a lot closer to graded book prices. And I think a big driver of that is that the only place to really get that pricing information that's trustworthy, that's up to date, that kind of thing, are these price consolidation sites, like Cover Price, Go Collect, GPA, whatever it is. And so people see that price for that book and they go, all right, that's what that's worth, whether it's raw or graded. And I've definitely noticed that's really come together. There used to be a big separation, but the way I look at it, why should I sell a raw book for half the price of a graded, and the person spends $40 to get it graded and then makes, $500 or whatever off of it? So,
and I guess, I don't know if it's a great segue, but I'm going to segue into the next conversation anyway. Something that we've talked about, off mic, is the idea, you both sell in different ways, but the idea of specifically buying and selling just one book. And I'm sure it could be done. And, it's an interesting hypothetical just to discuss, but because I don't sell enough to know exactly how to do it. I imagine it's fairly straightforward, but let's just pick a book that in this case we'll say is constant in the market, or at least it feels like it's constant. And Hulk 181. It's a book it's in high demand. There are also a lot of copies out there. This is not a rare book. It's not exactly hard to find, but it's a very expensive book. Could theoretically, Ryan, I'll point it to you. Could you just buy and sell just that one book and make money off that?
I mean, yeah. So there's actually the first thing that made me think of that was, it was last year, and it was when Eternals was going to be coming out, but the movie kept getting pushed back. And so Eternals #1, when they first announced the characters, all that kind of thing, the book spiked to like $2,500, something like that. And then when there hadn't been any news for a while, they dropped down to like 1,000, but you knew that book was going to go back up. And so I thought about doing it with that book. I thought about just buying every single copy I could of like a 9.8 Eternals 1 and just sitting on them for a year and then selling them when the trailer eventually dropped. And I would have made like 200% on my money from that. And I knew I had no question in my mind that would work. However, the way that what happened with me was I was like, that's not why I really wanted to get into buying and selling comics. You know, I didn't want to just have like, that felt like stocks to me, you know, where I'm just like, I'm just buying this one thing, you know, whatever. And I'm taking kind of like an advantage of this offset in the market. And so now thinking afterwards, I'm like, kind of wish I would have done it. You know? like, I wouldn't have minded, you know, having all that extra money. But the thing that I like with comics is I like having all the different cool books coming in all the time. And so it's fun for me that way. But I do think you can do that. And so you have to pick very specific books. There's going to be certain cases. It's not just any book, you know, that you're going to be able to do that with. There are going to be very specific cases, and you're going to really kind of need to time things. And so the reason Hulk 181, I think, is a very good choice is that we haven't seen that character yet in the MCU in any way. And I am sure we will see that character at some point. The tough part with that one is that if I was making some type of like play on a book like that, I like to know there's an end date. And so with Eternals, I knew there was a movie coming. And so you kind of have like an end point that you're working towards. With this, like we might not see Wolverine for 10 years. I mean, we'll probably see him sooner, but you have no idea. And so that's the thing that makes it a little tricky with that book is when you don't know the end date. But the one of the things that I know I've talked about in the past is I was comparing that to like Avengers 8. And so, you know, like Avengers 8, I see that book just spiking like crazy and the prices for Hulk 181 dropping, you know, and I'm just like, this is insanity. Like Kang is not a character anybody is going to care about in 10 years. Wolverine is a character everybody will care about always. And so like, I would never be making that type of trade, like spending more for that Avengers 8 book and then letting Hulk 181 drop. And it's dropped pretty significantly. I mean, like 30-40% in some cases. And so that's why I think like right now would be a good time to get into that. And that's where like I thought about it. I'm like, should I just hold off on buying stuff, you know, for a few months and just start piling into 181s? But they're so expensive. You know, I can only buy like
they're
one.
They're still very, very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, and in our past podcast that we talked with Chris, Vancouver Comic Junkie, he said, and it was, I think, going to be looked at in the annals of time, very prophetic, that in 10 years, we're going to be like, we could have gotten this Hulk 181 for that amount. You know, what the amount is that we're talking about right now, that's still expensive. But in 10 years, is going to be like, we could have had 3 of those or 4 of those or whatever it is, you know? And so I agree, man. I'm a big buyer on 181. I think I'm going to be making a play on it as well. I have one, but I'm not selling. That's my personal one that I have that got signed by Stan Lee. But, you know, interesting to what you were saying about just one book. So I feel like, at least for me, the way I invest and move books is I have different buckets for different things, like long-term, like, you know, stuff like that. And one of them that I have is books that I know I can make money on, that I have them priced in my head already. That's just quick. Like I know it's going to make money. So previous to it getting ridiculously out of hand, I was buying a lot of Moon Knight ones, and I was getting them for $20 and selling them for 80, 90, $100. And I just kept doing it. Like I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. I mean, I've probably gone through 15 to 20 of those already, but now they're already like $155, $125, which I think is crazy. So it's not in my rotation anymore. So now I'm doing, what is it? Spider-Woman #1. And I'm doing
that book is shockingly cheap or has, you know, it's crazy how little that book costs.
Exactly. And I'm buying them for cheap and then selling them for like $80, $90. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to keep doing it until, and that one also, and those are time frames too, like you mentioned, an end date, because Moon Knight 1, I knew was going to have an end date as it get closer to Moon Knight coming out. and the spec on it and everything is the first Moon Knight. It's a cool cover. They're going to want it. Same thing with Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman 1, you know, it's been announced. They've cast her. It's going to come out eventually, somehow, some way. So that book I'm going to keep doing until it gets out of hand, and then I'll find another book and I'm going to keep doing it. But and that's what I'm saying. Like whenever I see that book, I just know what price to buy it at, and I can flip it. So it's technically the same at a much smaller scale than like a Hulk 181. Yeah. But it's a book that, you know, like I'll just keep buying this book because I know I can make money off of it.
But to me, yeah, I you're right. It's the same thing, just on a different scale. Mm-hmm. My mind just immediately goes to the idea of turning and flipping the Hulk 181, always selling high, mm-hmm. and then buying when they're low. And the book is always going to, I think, over time, like Ryan said, 10 years from now, Wolverine is still going to be a character. Chris, Vancouver Comic Junkie, compared it to AF-15, mm-hmm. right? He said 181 is the next AF-15. Doesn't matter how many they printed. It is always going to be that book, because Wolverine is the only character that can rival Spider-Man in terms of popularity. Okay. And I kind of agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with him, but I want to take it a little bit further with the 181. So let's talk brass tacks. So if we're going to do this, let's really pretend like we're doing it. And let's say you're going to just buy and sell 181s, right? But let's just give a arbitrary number. Let's say you want to make $5,000 a month. How would you, because you have to obviously buy when it's low and sell when it's high, how would you make that work with the ebbs and flows of the market?
Yeah, so that's why I don't see that as something that you're doing for monthly income.
But you could, if you bought 10 of your allotted amount for the price that you're going to put in, let's say 20 grand, and you buy 10 of them, $2,000 each, whatever, and then you sell when it's high, and it's you bought for 10 and you sold for 60, just for an example, when it's high. If you allot it out for the year, that's $5,000 a month. Now, obviously, it's not when you need, because we've all said that this is a side thing that we do. It's not our main thing. Then technically, we did the $5,000 a month, but we just had to hold it until the market.
Yeah, you're looking at it like flipping a house.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. So like that is similar to what I was talking about with like the Eternals. It's like, and the same thing. I did that with Special Marvel Edition 15. I bought a ton of copies of that book when it was a lot cheaper than it is now, and so yeah. If you look at it that way, yes, I completely agree that it averages out to that amount over the course of a year. With me, and the reason why it's tough for me to do that is I like the just regular money coming in from sales of books, because it means I can go buy more books. I love buying books. And so if I'm doing that, then that's not how it's working for me. And so that's what really kind of keeps me from making that kind of decision.
It takes the fun out of it. Yeah. Like you said, then it's like buying stocks and ultimately it's no longer the hobby. It's just something you're doing to make a little extra cash, which, I mean, I'm assuming
that's fine. That's
to make extra cash. But.
Yeah. And it's a plus of it, but I enjoy the just getting stuff all the time. And so I kind of lose that.
Man.
Ryan, do you currently have a Hulk 181? I think you do, don't you?
Yeah, I have a 8.0 qualified. I had a 7.0 qualified, and then I bought an 8.0 qualified, sold my 7.0. And so I've got that now. But it is definitely, I think everybody has those stories of books they wish they would have bought, like 6 months ago. And because there was a guy on Instagram that was selling his 9.4 181, and it was like $9,000. And I had the money at that moment and I could have bought it, and I was like, it's still a little high, and because it was like it was, but it's not anymore.
You're talking about spending $10,000 on a comic book. I think it's always high at that point. It doesn't matter what the book is.
Yeah, man.
I have never spent over 10. Like I haven't broken that 5-figure barrier. The problem is, like, if I really would like to, I'm sure I want to get like into like maybe like an AF-15 or something like that at some point. And you have to, like, there's no choice anymore except to spend that kind of money. 0.5s are selling for 12 to 14.
Yeah. Well, unless you trade, that's the only other thing that I have been thinking about is trading. I had a guy that wanted to trade and I was halfway there because he wanted an FF1 and a Hulk one. So I would have been halfway there if I would have gotten my Grail from episode number 1.
I heard that episode.
So yeah, AF15 is my Grail, man. I put it on my Instagram that I want to get it this year. I don't know. I mean, I could still get it. I just think that last year I was I was haggling on a $5,000 0.5 AF15, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna spend $5,000 on this damn book. And now it's like, damn it. But it is what it is, man.
Yep. Yeah. That's why I try not to think about that too much, because the way I look at it is I bought other books and the other books went up in price. And so that's really how I've worked through those kinds of decisions where it's like, yeah, I didn't spend that $9,000 on that, but I spent $9,000 on something else. And that something else also went up. And because I'm generally buying key issues. That's usually what I'm buying. And those are the ones that have really moved the most over this last kind of like 6-month period.
Well, the other difficulty then is, are you buying, like, Jesus, if you would have gotten that AF 15, right? That's going in the personal collection you're never selling, right?
Yeah.
And so even though
does make it an extra challenge. Yeah.
I mean, so I've had this internal conversation with myself on what to do with that, because it's it's been selling for like 15, 14 grand now, right? A 0.5, something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a crazy sale at 20, but that was a fluke.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I think it's about 15, probably roughly where it's at. So if it was 15, in my mind, the conversation I would have is, how can I get a better graded AF15 with this 15 grand? So in my mind, I would try to figure out a roundabout way to get books that are going to go up to 20, 25 grand, so that I can get a 1.8 or a 1.5 or something. And that's what I'd be trying to do, because I would want to upgrade from the 0.5, and knowing that I tripled my money, I can make more money to get a better graded copy.
And that was the focus of one of my prior videos that I did when I did an unboxing, and I had a whole bunch of books that I needed to open at once, and it was like 23 grand in books. And so I compared it to an AF15 on like why I bought these versus an AF15. And the reason is I bought that 23 grand in books for like 15 grand. I can't buy a $23,000 AF15 for 15 grand. You don't get those kinds of deals on mega keys like that. And so I can turn that money into more money, where with one of those other books, I'm paying pretty much full retail most of the time.
I mentioned that to Jake too the other day when we talked about how I can outrun the gains of an AF15 with other books.
Yeah, it's completely. I feel the same way. Now it is the trade-off, and you can say is it's a lot more work. Like having one book that you have to buy and sell versus, I think in that unboxing I probably had 30 or 40. It's definitely a different amount of effort that you have to put in to do it. But I'm willing to put in that work to make that additional money to that I wouldn't, that with the AF15, it's just more challenging.
Yeah, it's like the AF15 is just like you set it and forget it. It's going to go up. You just leave it there. With the 30 books, you have to move them, or you have to figure out how to trade and move, or what have you. The other thing we talked about too was I've seen, and I was going to ask you this, Ryan, because you deal in those bigger books, is sometimes the bigger books you have, the less market you have for people buying it. So I've seen people move bigger books by trading like a short box worth of keys.
So that's definitely something that I've seen. And one example, or a couple examples, there's a guy on YouTube that goes by ETA Nick. If you haven't watched him, he has a lot of great content. He can be a little grumpy sometimes, but he, if you want to learn how to grade and all that kind of thing, he has the videos to watch. But one thing
I've watched him. He's fantastic.
Yeah. And so just let the stuff where he gets angry, like, let that go and just keep watching. But he talks about a pyramid, like a pyramid with buyers, and so you've got, as the price goes up, your number of buyers drops significantly. And one place he was showing this was with the recent huge fluctuations in price with Giant Size X-Men #1, where 1 week you have a sale at like 72 grand, and the next week it's at 48 grand. And it's because that one sale, you had maybe 4 people in the world or 3 people in the world that were willing to spend that kind of money. They're bidding on that book. Now one of them has it. And so now you just have 2 people that are willing to spend that money. And so that's where you can see those huge swings in price. But what you were talking about with trades, there's actually a really good example of that was Alex the Comic Hoarder. He did a video maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, where he got a All-Star number 8, which is the first appearance of Wonder Woman. And he traded a whole bunch of keys for that one book. And so it's because it's really difficult to sell a $40,000 book, but it's really a lot easier to sell maybe $500 books. And so that person is willing to make that trade to get their money out of that book. And so, yeah, that's definitely a thing. I have found, though, it does seem to be that a lot of people that are trading those big books, they want to trade for other big books. So what you need to trade with somebody who's not doing it as a collector. You're trading with somebody that's a seller, because then that's how you're going to get somebody that might be willing to take that type of trade.
Nice. Okay. Well, next thing we should jump into to kind of close out this episode, let's talk about one spec, a book that you are currently specking on, something maybe it's a recent purchase or it's about to be a purchase or something like that, but something that you've been looking at and you're hoping to close on or get one in the near future.
Who, you want me to go first?
I'm looking at you. You
Okay.
can't tell?
I can't tell. One night was looking at me and one night was looking at Rick. Did y'all catch that? No, okay. So I just not heard about it. I've known about it, but it just came back on my radar. I was listening to the latest podcast of Certified Comic Shop with Jason from Certified Comic Shop. And he had, I forgot the guy's name on there, but he's a pro skateboarder that has his own LCS. It's a Eisner nominated LCS, I believe, as well. And they were talking about it, and he's also shares my background. He's a Mexican American, and he mentioned Reptile. So you guys know about Reptile?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
He's a Mexican American superhero created by Humberto Ramos and Christos Gage. His first appearance is Avengers: The Initiative, featuring Reptile #1 from May of 2009. And he has his special ability, or his superhero abilities, to turn into a dinosaur. That's why his name is Reptile. So I'm going to be probably specking hard on that, just from a diversity standpoint. And then also recently Reptile #1, which is his first solo series, which just came out a few months ago in May. So you guys can get that as well. That's the Jesus special that I was telling you about, Jake. Just buy 40 of them, man. You know, you'll be fine.
Oh yeah, I'll jump right on that. I'll go next. So here's a book that's been on my watch list for months. And I keep saying, I better buy that book. And I keep not buying it because I keep thinking, it'll be around. It'll be around. And it has been around, but it's going to pop off at some point, and I'm probably going to regret having not purchased a nice high grade in it. Akira #1. So this book is got a sweet cover, all black, 1988, but it's the reason I think that it has a high chance of popping off. I believe it was a year ago. It was right before the pandemic hit. There was an announcement that Taika Waititi was actually going to direct it, and Leonardo DiCaprio was producing the movie. So he was there. They were signed on, I believe, and there are still rumors floating around and things like that about it. But if Taika is on board, that's gold. Like, Taika is one of the best directors working in Hollywood, and if he's going to do an adaptation of Akira, that sounds to me like a really great spec book. Now, I don't know if that's still happening. It sounds like he's got about 20 different Disney / Star Wars / Marvel movies he's going to be directing in the near future. But if Taika is on board to direct a Akira film, then I think that book is definitely great to have. And you can get a high grade copy right now for relatively cheap. I think you can get like a 994 for, $200. Depends on if you're getting a great deal or not.
Yeah, and that cover is a black cover too. It's hard to get in high grade, I think, too, because of the black.
Yeah, it's that black and red cover. And the thing you always have to watch out for that one is there's a second print. And the only way to really know is there's a price on the cover that's different. I think the second print is like $395 and the first print is $299 or $349 or something like that. And so
first print is $350.
Okay, that's what it is. All right. Yeah. So just watch out for that, and because then you might be one of those people that gets surprised when you submit your book to get graded, and then it comes back as a second print.
That reminds me that did happen to me on Transformers #1. I thought
Transformers 1 is a little easier because it's a back cover.
It's a back cover, but if you don't know that you're supposed to be looking at that back cover, and it wasn't even the back cover that threw me, that I figured it out. I opened the front cover, and in the bottom, print on the first page, in the little sub print, it said third print. And I was like, oh, damn it, son of a... And I was like, but that was just me not knowing.
Yeah, you want the guy with the sunglasses that's like, I don't remember, but he's very obvious that he is that's the first print. If you know that's what you're looking for. Second print is like some photo, because I have that. I don't remember what the third print is.
I believe it's Zit Cream. It's some sort of Zit Cream. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Something like that. Okay. And Ryan, you got a spec to share?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a book that I've bought a few copies of recently, and it's a Fantastic Four Annual #1. And so for me, when I'm buying what I call a spec, I usually am not buying, books that you're going to find in like dollar bins, that kind of stuff, that I'm hoping some type of announcement's going to happen. That book is going to spike. What I like to buy when I'm buying a spec book is I like to buy established keys that I think have a strong potential in the future. And so that way it's really reducing my risk when I'm buying that book, because there's always going to be demand for that book. It's still Fantastic Four Annual #1, but it's an origin of Submariner. And so we've had Submariner books just going nuts because of the potential that he is the villain in the next Black Panther movie. It seems like there's still a lot of question around that, but it has not stopped Fantastic Four #4 and Submariner #1 from going up just leaps and bounds over the last couple months. But Fantastic Four Annual #1, which is an origin book for him, hasn't gone up all that much. And so I think that's a good book to buy right now. And so, like I said, I bought a few copies of it. All mine are pretty low grade. I'd like to find a higher grade, but it's just those square bound old books. It is.
What year was that printed?
I think it was 63.
Oh, so that would have been about the same time as the ASM annual.
July 63.
And yeah, square bound annual book.
Those annuals, they never seem to survive very well.
Especially from the 60s. The Journey to Mystery was in early 64, but all within the same time period, and they were all essentially printed the exact same way. And holy crap, those books do not hold together at all.
No, they seem to split at that cover very easily.
Yep, it gets a rip in it. Probably just from years of creasing, basically.
Well, I mean, it's just because it's so different than your standard comic book. It's glued on. You don't have the staple where it's kind of like a pivot point. So instead, you get this. Yeah, you get that crease point. And it just becomes a weak spot in the paper.
Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We really do appreciate it. You can reach out to us. You can reach out to me. I'm at Omega_Red on Instagram. You can reach out to Jesus at guaranteed_comics, or you can simply email us, spectalespodcast@gmail.com. Oh, that's right. We also have an Instagram account for the podcast itself as well. That's spec_tales_podcast. Ryan, go ahead and throw out your ats one more time. I know you did it earlier.
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm at automatic_comics. On eBay, I'm automatic_comics. And on YouTube, I'm just automatic comics. And you can search for that. Find me pretty easily now.
Yeah, he's easy to find. And like I said earlier, lots of really great information. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. We had a lot of fun. I'm sure this is going to be a fun one to put out, and look forward to having you on again sometime in the future.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for listening. If you are enjoying what you're hearing, go ahead and please give us a review, 4 stars or whatever you think is appropriate. We would appreciate it being above 2 stars. but, like I said, whatever you find is appropriate. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you all next week.